How are you doing? Joe Doocey here. Just going to run off a series of videos to tell my story over 21 years or so of how I've been destroyed by the state. By that I mean the courts, the gardai, etc. I want to show how I was destroyed and assassinated by the media as well, probably on instruction by the state. This time I'm going to show all the evidence of how I was framed. I'm going to name and shame everyone involved. And it's a thing that I'm never going to give up on, is trying to get justice or highlight the inability to get justice in Ireland. The reason for this series of videos is that I will be sending them to every TD and minister in the country with the evidence. And then I'll be calling to see the ministers and the TDs in their offices to get the response on it. So I'll present all the evidence. You can make your own mind up as to how bad it is or whatever. I know I've suffered for 21 years. So this is the first video where I'll document the first couple of years of the persecution by the Gardaí and the courts and whatever. And I suppose I'll kick the story off. My story starts in 2002. I might be a bit out on dates, but in May of 2002, I was handed 16 summonses by a Garda Frank Burke and a Garda Enos McNulty, both based in Ballina Garda Station at the time. The 16 summonses, the breakdown of them was 13 of the summonses were abusive and threatening text messages to a girl I'd previously gone out with. Also a charge of criminal damage, that I was supposed to have smashed her patio door, and then 2 public order charges. So not much happened until I got the book of evidence on this. I didn't know what was going on. I was arrested twice in relation to these charges. I made one statement explaining the harassment that I was receiving from this particular woman, and she had stole her car on me. Her name was Carmel Devaney from Ballina. Before I went out with her, she had previously gone out with a detective in Ballina called Michael Keaveney. And when we finished up, she was back with this McKeaveney, as he's commonly known. And all sorts of things started to happen. I became the subject of being followed by squad cars all around the place, pulled many times, arrested a few times prior to getting the summonses. When I received the book of evidence on these 16 charges, I was very surprised to see the book of evidence, in that there was 2 signed confessions from me to the whole lot, which never happened. I had made one statement to Garda Burke. He was the only man that ever I dealt with, or he arrested me, and I gave him the story of the harassment by the guards and what Devaney had done to me. Of course, this statement never turned up. 2 signed confessions turned up instead. This case came to court in July 2002, and I couldn't figure out how they got me signature on 2 statements. So it was actually the day before the court case I managed to get a forensic expert down. James Nash was his name, and I'll be putting up all the documents with the evidence to show it to you in snippets. But James Nash is a forensic document examiner and a handwriting consultant. He arrived down in Ballina Garda Station the day before the court case to examine these alleged statements I'd made, which I said I didn't make. So he went in and he brought with him a thing called the ESDA machine, which was used in the Birmingham 6 case. What that does is it's a cling film on a sheet of paper. It sends an electrical charge and it shows up, it vacuums anything that's on the paper, and it shows the indentations on if they come up. James Nash went in and he examined the two statements, and he said that it was my signature that was on them. I'd given him a copy of my signature on 10 different things, and he said it was my signature. And I said, I cannot understand how they got it. At a later stage investigating, we found out I had told him that I had signed custody record sheets and stuff when I was in the Garda station, and I'll show you the custody record sheets. They came back as refused to sign, but I know I signed them, so I presume that's how they got my signature on these statements. So, as I said, James Nash tested the statements with the ESDA machine, and he found quite a lot of indentations on the statements, which were inexplicable. Because he didn't have much time to fully investigate, he could only concentrate on one word which had come through on the statement, and that was the word acknowledge. And he just couldn't explain how it happened. Now I'm going to give you a quick run through, or try and explain it to you on paperwork. Garda Burke claimed that he took two statements off me. One on the 6th of October in 2001, and he claims he took another statement off me on the 30th of the 10th, the 30th of October 2001. Now, when James Nash tested the statements with the ESDA machine, one word shone through: acknowledge. If you can see it there. Now that's on the statement of the 30th. Now that had indented onto the, faintly came through onto the statement of the 6th in the exact same position. That the two statements were perfectly aligned was the evidence he gave, and I'll be showing you the documentation to prove this evidence. Now, that was an impossibility, James Nash said, to happen. Now, we also found several other indentations. We found the word receptionist on the statement of the 30th, and we found Garda Francis Burke's signature several times running through the page. So we didn't know where the word receptionist came from, and we didn't know where the signatures, what statements they applied to. Anyway, we went to court the next day, and the only evidence James Nash could give is what he had found. When Garda Burke was on the stand, he was presented and told that an indentation had been found, or indentations had been found, and he nearly passed out. He went as white as a ghost. He lost his power of speech. The judge hearing the case was Mary Devons, and she immediately, when he came under pressure, she immediately jumped in, covered up for him, saying, "Oh, I'm not taking any forensic evidence when it's only one word." She wasn't interested in the explanation that we need to investigate the other indentations, and she just ended the case there and then and found me guilty and gave me 4 months in jail. It was adjourned that day, and I was sentenced at the next hearing in Foxford. I got 4 months in jail. We'll put that in as well for you. So that was it. We had to go through the process then of appealing the case and brought it to the circuit court. That came up the following year in 2003. Because we hadn't found where the other indentations came from, I asked James Nash to go back in to match up all the words he could to find out where they came from. and this was done at great expense. But he went in, and he went in again, and he matched the word receptionist, and the word receptionist came off the vanish statement of the 18th of October 2001. In other words, her statement of the 18th, her statement was taken on the 18th, 12 days before the statement of the 30th. Yet the word receptionist came through on the statement of the 30th, more heavily indented on the statement of the 30th, and through onto the statement of the 6th. Now, how could that happen when this document wasn't in existence at the time? So things got more interesting. He then matched in the Garda signatures which were across, and they came from one of this statement, and they came from statements which were made prior to this. So how could they be indented on this? And always these two statements were perfectly aligned, everything that went through them. So anyone that knows anything about statements, you'll know that that wasn't possible. So we had more evidence to give in the circuit court regarding this, and Burke gave his excuse was that the word acknowledge, he says that he had written the statement and left out the word acknowledge and wrote it in at a later stage. But James Nash contradicted that, saying that there was no hesitation in the flow of the pen. So he said that was rubbish. Also, when James Nash was back doing the second testing in the Garda station, Garda Burke was the man that was allegedly minding all the documents, the statements and everything. And when James Nash went in, Frank Burke, or Garda Burke, whatever you want to call him, was sitting at the table with the statement out, and he had a pen in his hand, and he said, "Oh, I just forgot myself, and I doodled on the word acknowledge." So James Nash asked him, "What do you mean doodled on the word acknowledge?" And he showed him the statement of the 30th, and he had overwritten the word acknowledge. And James Nash thought, wow, this is why would you do that? He says, "Oh, I just forgot myself, here's the pen, and I overwrote it." So James Nash says, okay. And he decided to retest the statements. So he tested the statement of the 30th twice with the ESDA machine, and the one of the 6th once with the ESDA machine. And he said there wasn't an indentation on any of the statements, they were all gone. So I said, what does that mean? And he says they've cleaned them, they've cleaned up all the statements, he says. And the evidence he gave in court to that was that the only way indentations can be removed from a paper or document is to wet them, dampen them, and then roll them with a heavy implement, an iron. And he says that's the only way you can get them out, and he gave that evidence in court. We figured it out over the years why he claimed to have overwritten the word acknowledge. When we did the first test, there was a raised inquiry within the Gardaí, and they informed us that they were sending down their own forensic guys to examine these statements. So Garda Burke hadn't expected that we'd be back a second time, that I'd be sending James Nash in again a second time to examine him. So by overwriting the word acknowledge, he explained the indentation to his own forensic guys, and there was nothing he could do then. That was his lame excuse when we came in the second time, that he forgot himself and overwrote the word. This evidence was given in the circuit court in the appeal, and the judge who heard the circuit court appeal was Judge Kevin Haw, and this taught me how bent the system was, because Judge Kevin Haw covered up everything for the guards, and Kevin Hall became the first Garda ombudsman, GSOC. So it just shows you how they get promoted and they're linked in to cover up. When the evidence was given of the statements being tampered with and the indentations being cleaned, Kevin Hall said, "So what?" And that was his attitude. He got away with that. The state prosecutor at the time was a solicitor called Seamus Hughes, who just lied his way through the whole case, misled, did everything he could do that was wrong. He later got promoted to a judge. So that was the main thing about the statements. We proved beyond any doubt that Gerda Burke had written them all out at the one time, the whole book of evidence. That was the general consensus. However, when James Nash was on the stand, he was reluctant to say that, and it was, to me, it looked like he had been got to, because he was the head of forensics in the Garda before he went independent or freelance. So he gave the evidence of what he found, but he wouldn't go the extra mile and say anything derogatory. So that was that. Another incident that happened in the district court was that when I was presented with these charges and summoned, Carmen Devaney began blackmailing me for money over the charges. And she was ringing me up saying, "Oh look, I can get these charges. I'll drop the charges if you give me £1,000. On one of the calls she made, I think it was coming up to Christmas 2002 or 2001, sorry. Coming up to Christmas 2002, she was blackmailing me. She made a phone call looking for £1,000. After she had finished the call, I sent her a text and I said, "Thanks very much for that. At last I managed to record you." When she was in the district court, she thought I had recorded it, and she admitted to the blackmail. Now, in the district court, you'll remember that I 13 of the charges were for abusive texts and whatever, and I'll be showing you Gerda Burke's statement. He said that he seen these text messages on the phone, but because she wanted her phone, he told her to delete them, write them down and delete them. That was the evidence they came to court with, a handwritten piece of paper by her saying that I'd called her a prostitute and scum and all this. Absolutely crazy stuff. Keaveney was with her at every case. He was caught coaching her on the stand in the circuit court hearing, and that developed into all-out war between solicitors and Keaveney in the courtroom. Crazy, absolutely crazy stuff going on. They also claimed that I smashed her patio door on, I think it's the 11th of August 2001. They said that they found me in a front garden. This is Garda's Burke and McNulty again. They said that they found me in her front garden covered in blood. They said that I was profuse, his exact words was that I was bleeding profusely from the arm, and that I had smashed 2 holes in the patio glass or whatever. He said that I was highly intoxicated and couldn't stand up. He said that I was very abusive and that they had an awful job to arrest me and convey me to the Garda station. I'll show you the custody record for that night. The Garda that was the member in charge of the Garda station that night was a guard called Jimmy White. When they brought me in, I kind of knew Jimmy to see him around, but I wouldn't have known him as such. But he seemed to be one of the more decent ones, and all I can recall him saying to the two boys was, "Not on my watch." You'll also see from the custody record sheet, there's no mention of blood. There's no mention of me being intoxicated. You know, when Burke was questioned on this, why, you know, if I was in such a sorry state and covered in blood, why didn't he ring a doctor or an ambulance and all this? And of course he couldn't explain himself because he was lying through his teeth. But anyway, I think I was released an hour or so later. Jimmy White rang a taxi for me, and he sent me home. And he said, "Go straight home now." He says, "You know, these boys are out to get you." So I said, "That's sound," and I went home. So that was the experience, the highlights of the first incident with the guards, and this case went on probably for about 3 years. Judge Kevin Haw naturally found me guilty, with no, as you've heard the evidence I've just given. But he suspended the jail sentence that Mary Devons had given me in the district court. She had given me 4-month jail. He suspended the sentence and gave me a fine. He was a bit ironic when he was summing up. He said that he kept staring the guards out of it, and Seamus Hughes, the state solicitor, he knew well I'd been set up. He said, "I'm suspending the sentence," and he says, "I have to think of a fine which would really deter Mr. Doocey from breaking the law again. Should he break the law again, €20. And he said it real sarcastically, staring the guards out, but he still did the wrong thing. He convicted me knowing I was an innocent man, innocent of the charges. So that was basically it. I then brought that case to the High Court at a cost of, I think it was 20,000 for 20 minutes, and of course that was upheld by the judge in the High Court as well. The solicitor I had on this case was a man called Michael McDerby, and you'll see in the paper clips that he was eventually done with fraud for misrepresenting clients, for representing both sides in cases, for fiddling clients' accounts, and he was, I think, suspended for a few years. His daughter Kathy McDerby was also working with him at the time on this case. Looking back at the job he did, and at the time I would have been totally naive to the law. I was never involved with the Gardaí. I'd never been to court before. I wouldn't have been known to Gardaí. I wouldn't have known what the system was like or what was going on, but they ripped me off for thousands and thousands, and always insisted on being paid in cash. Looking back at the way they fought the case, that case should have never gone to court. But then again, they milked me for what, maybe 50,000-60,000, and that was the experience of the High Court. As I say, of all the paperwork here, this is James Nash's reports, which will be you'll be able to read online. And rather than go through the whole case, what I'm going to do is put up the transcript relevant to this. Now, there was a lot more arrests as I was fighting this case, but there's far too many to put in. So in the next video, I'll address in chronological order the amount of arrests and the beatings I got off the Gardaí. I mean, I went to TDs, I went to ministers about this. That's Bernard Durkin there. I lived in Naas for a while. He was the local TD up there. I went to Jim Higgins. I went to Dara Calleary. And once they had read the story and probably talked to whoever they talked to, they just disappeared. They refused to answer the phone. I couldn't make an appointment to see them again. But I will this time be sending these videos with the evidence on, and I will be demanding answers, and I will be calling to these ministers and TDs. I don't expect to get justice. Justice doesn't arrive in Ireland. But what I want to do is to highlight for you how the system doesn't work, and how all the elements of the state work together to assassinate you. I mean, you take a look at the Western people, the way they worded the reports on these court cases. They painted me to be a lunatic. The headings on the paper were psychotic businessman and all this. They literally destroyed me to a point where everyone kept out of my way in Ballina. And you have to remember that the internet wasn't around this time. There wasn't a great link up on Garda corruption. I wouldn't have known anyone. I relied on solicitors and barristers for advice. What a mistake. I'm a lot more savvy now to the law. I'd beat that case myself, knowing what I know today, if it was back in the day. There's no point. We'll just have to play it out now, and I'll see the relevant people. And let's see, will anyone do anything? You never know. I'm the eternal optimist. But I will be pressing issue, and I won't be stopping this. So you're going to see a series of videos. This is with the evidence. This is the first video. There'll probably be maybe 4 or 5 of them. Because to date I probably have over 50 convictions. I've been arrested probably over 100 times. I've done a 3.5 year jail sentence to the day. I've been wrongfully arrested on another occasion. This story, you think what I've just shown you is bad. I'm watching this video. Wait until you see what comes next. Thanks for watching this video, and please be alert to the Gardaí and the state. Thank you. Oh, sorry, before I go, I was in the Garda station so much they gave me my own mug.